Good evening, everyone. Time for this week's silver update. Sorry I didn't get to a video in the last few days. Been very busy. It's been a very interesting market. Drawn some new trend lines here. Kind of modified the old trend line just because there's a couple of points on here that seem to match up. And I've drawn some new trend lines that show the current decline. Seem to be in a trend channel here, rough trend channel, and you can see we've just broken out of it. So it appears that we're moving up. We do have, let's get a resistance line here. Looks like resistance is right about there. So we do have resistance at about 33.75, and then we also have the old high resistance at about, what is that price? 34.3 roughly. So we're approaching new highs pretty strong. We had a big shakeout here. I don't know if you recall, that happened after hours, and it was on, you can see, extremely low volume. So for all intents and purposes, it really didn't happen. It was, my understanding was that this was connected to, someone said it was the rumor about Gaddafi being assassinated. Also, it was right after the market closed, and as someone said, it corresponded with another margin rise. I haven't been able to keep track of all those. They come so fast and furious. If you remember, the last one we had was right here. So it didn't seem to do too much. Now, I had projected a run to 35 before we corrected, and as I said before, I wanted to see the strength of the breakout before we corrected. We did, from here to here, we ran about 350 or so. This was about 1/3 pullback. I don't follow Fibonacci's, but it's probably in that area. This I do not consider a correction back. Now this here appears to be very close to a correction back. It may be all that we get. So if you look at that price, that is about, I think, let's see, we're at 31.75 and the old high was 31.2. So that, I would say that for all intents and purposes is a pullback and a test. It seems to be a test of this support here and not the original. Well, you can see this baseline here, 31.2, that's 31.75, 31.2 would be back in here. If we pull back, we can see that 31.2 on the chart. And that's, no, it's not on this chart. We need to go further out. And that's back here. So the question is this pullback sufficient to be a test of support, or will we have to revisit this? So you can see that's how far we missed it by. That's on little to no volume. So our MACD seems to be a little bit on the overbought side, so we may just roll over and come down and get a real test of this. I will say this is good enough for 35, even though we didn't make it all the way. I was hoping for 38. One of the swing rules was indicating 38. It doesn't look like we're going to get that, because this pretty much is a test. So now the question is, are we going to retest all the way to 31.2 and set in strong support, or are we going to move up from here and establish new highs? It's anyone's guess at this point, so we'll see what happens next week. Wanted to talk about a few articles, well, a few ideas and articles here. First of all, I wanted to talk about a video on Are You Buying Silver's channel. I'm not sure what happened with him. He's got 5 videos. I think he took his channel down and brought it back up again. I did have him under the Silver Gurus. I may have to add him back in. Anyway, he did an interview with Antal Fiketty. If you can't remember how to pronounce it, my wife told me, just think of spaghetti. So it's Fiketty, and it's a fascinating interview with him, and I'll put a link to it. He goes through a very long view of the history of silver, the demonetization of silver. You have to listen very closely. He explains how China was the last to demonetize and why that's important, and how the US and Britain demonetized, how silver is the only real constitutional money. Now, I don't know if he was correct when he said that the Constitution puts silver as money. I believe it was actually the Coinage Act, the original Coinage Act, that defined what a dollar was. I don't think the Constitution actually defines the dollar. But the dollar was defined as a number of grains of silver. So he explains a little bit of the history of bimetallism. Very knowledgeable man, and he explains some interesting points of how we went wrong. One of the ways we went wrong is to fix the ratio of gold to silver. That's always a mistake because, as you know, America found a tremendous amount of silver, and some of the Europeans didn't have that much. It caused a lot of tension, and it was fixed, and it just caused a big problem. It would be much better, the ideal system would be a bimetallic, free-floating, free market system with freely competing banks as well. So you would have paper that is backed by silver and gold. Silver and gold are freely tradable in the open market, and they're not pegged to each other. That would be the ideal system. Do I think we're going to get it? No, but that would be ideal. He also went into his theory on backwardation, and some have called it zero backwardation. He used the term, I can't remember, complete backwardation. Anyway, the point is that he is forecasting that silver will come to a point of backwardation to where it cannot be purchased for any amount of money. You'll be able to trade for it with other commodities, but you won't be able to buy it with paper money, and that will be a complete wipeout at that point, because that's the end of the fiat system. So he's a very interesting man. I highly recommend that you listen to those videos. I'll go ahead and link them. Also wanted to talk about, a lot of people have asked me about Sprott. A lot of interest in the PSLV. It came out last fall, and it was issued around 10. It's around 15, so that's a good 50% gain for anybody that's in it. Now, I don't have anything personally against Eric Sprott. I think he's a great guy. I would never invest in this unless I was forced to. For example, if it was an option in my 401k. In my particular case, my 401k, the plan that my company has with Fidelity, only allows the purchase of mutual funds, so it's not even an option for me. But for those that have an option, that might be an investment they might want to do. Now, it's held in Canada, but again, do we know whether he has the silver or not? Well, I mean, how do we know? I'm not saying anything against his character, but how do we know he has the silver? Do we have to take his word on it? Or are we going to have videotapes of the vaults? It's all those issues that come up. And so for that reason, I do not recommend miners. I do not recommend stocks. I don't recommend anything but physical metal in your own hand. And the reason why is because when it hits the fan, I think that most of these obligations are going to be reneged upon. We're starting to see a lot of turmoil in Wisconsin and in Ohio and some other states because the obligations that have been made to public workers are just, they're untenable. They can't be kept. They're going to be reneged upon. and that's going to cause a lot of turmoil. Same sort of thing. You just don't know what's going to happen when it hits the fan. So for that reason, I don't recommend PSLV. If you have to buy a paper silver investment, I do recommend it if it's your only choice. If your only choice to buy in an investment account like a 401k, then I would go ahead and buy the PSLV over the SLV. And that takes me to my next point, which is a video. I will link this. It's not on YouTube. It's revolutionarypolitics.tv, and this guy is doing an expose of the iShares Silver Trust SLV scam.
Well, first of all, let me read you guys some stuff. And I'll read in the prospectus right here with the delivery. It says, unless otherwise agreed to by the custodian, silver is delivered to the redeeming authorized participants in the form of physical bars only. So it's just saying about the delivery of the bars. But the very next sentence, when you turn the page, it says that redemptions may be suspended. And it gives you the reasons why they could be suspended. It says during any period in which regular trading on the New York Stock Exchange is suspended. Well, I mean, trading could be suspended, you know, if we go into a hyperinflation, a currency problem. So right there, if trading is suspended, you will not be able to redeem your SLV for physical.
So, same sort of point. I'll link this video down below. The question is when it hits the fan, what obligations are going to be honored? And I personally don't believe that there's any silver in the SLV anyway, so there's nothing to deliver. But even if there is, you have to redeem it 50,000 shares at a time, and they have all kinds of clauses in there saying that they can renege. So, terrible idea. I think it's a scam. Not only is it a scam, it is an attempt by JP Morgan to divert investors from real silver. Because remember, there's $9 billion in the SLV. That's 300 million ounces at current prices. And that's 300 million ounces that they don't have to deliver the physical on. So if you think about what they're projecting, the potential default on the COMEX being roughly 100 million ounces, then 300 million ounces that the SLV has or doesn't have, obviously that's going to be enough to make or break the bank at that point. I personally don't think they have the silver. And last of all, we've got an article from Zero Hedge. Now, Ted Butler and Bixweir are very adamant about letter writing campaigns to the CFTC. I'm kind of surprised after the last vote they had, and Bart Chilton apparently was the only one that voted, and they came up with their phony ruling and actually expanded the ability of the big banks to short and all kinds of crazies. I don't know why Ted has confidence and Bix has confidence in the CFTC. I don't have any confidence in them. The votes they take to me are kind of like the votes that you see in the Senate or the House, where you see that it passes or fails. Normally it passes because they're always passing horrific bills, but it passes by one vote. And you know, in the back room, they're making deals where they say, well, I'll agree to vote against this and you'll agree to vote for that, and they're basically throwing their constituents under a bus because they're cutting backroom deals to make it appear. It's just a big phony game, and I think that the CFTC is also just a big phony game. I don't have any confidence in their ability to, or their intent to regulate these markets. It's gone on so long, I can't see how. I can't see how there's any honesty to what they're doing. I think they're all a bunch of crooks. So is the SEC. So, but good luck to Ted. Good luck to Bix. I wish them all the best. Hope they're successful, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. So, we're at about 33.47. We got a nice little rally tonight starting out, and then it fell back. But you can see at 33.40 we got a nice little breakout here. So This may be the week. I think I'm going to project that this will be the week that we either retest 3120 or we go into new highs. I don't think we've got much time to play around. We do seem to be having the makings of a pennant forming here. Something like that. The last one I had drawn, we broke out to the upside. So we may be forming up a pennant. We are a little bit overbought on the MACD. So not really sure, but I think this week we're going to see either a retest of 3120 or a breakout up through 35. And talk to you next time.